Hello and welcome to a new episode of The Wrap. Today I'm super excited to have an expert within AI in recruitment and HR joining us for this episode. If you're working in HR in the Nordic, you should know who he is because he's all over my LinkedIn feed at least. He's an expert in ChatGPT for HR. He has a newsletter which is called Full Stack HR. Which I've been following. It's super interesting. He has webinars with thousands of viewers. He also has a very cool YouTube channel. So we have Johannes Sundlo with us today. Welcome to the ramp, Johannes.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for having me, and thank you for that lovely introduction. It feels so strange hearing it still, but yeah, I guess that is 100% true. I have all of that, and it is a deep passion of mine talking about this topic. So absolutely, but delighted to be here.
Very cool to have you here. Okay, so today we have so much to talk about. So I'm like, where do we start? I think the context for the people listening in, just understanding your journey to becoming the expert you are today, more about your work background, maybe educational background, just a bit, walk down the memory lane to know more about your story.
My journey towards HR started when I was a ski teacher. So I was one of the kids who went to one of the ski resorts in Sweden, Åre, to do one season, and then I got stuck for 5 seasons. At the end, I was a team lead for the ski school in Duved outside of Åre. And when I stood up on Monday meetings and said, "This is what we're going to do this week," I got 20 different responses from all the people in the room, basically. And that sort of inspired me to pursue a career in HR because there had to be some kind of reasoning behind why I said the same, but I got 20 different results. And how do you get people aligned when you are a manager? So that essentially sort of ramped me up into HR. But then at the same time, when I started studying HR, I was very keen on getting a job. And then everyone sort of pointed me towards that you need experience within HR as well. So I started working on the side as a recruitment assistant. And then at the same time, I've always been very passionate about all things digital as well, like from a personal point of view. So I also founded, together with Fredrik and Karl-Oskar, something called HR Sweden, which is a digital community, still is. Not that active anymore, but at the time, that was the only digital community in Sweden. And at the time, social media was on the rise. So obviously, we spent a lot of time thinking and pondering about how social media would affect HR. And so that is really where all of this starts, for some sort of, if we summarize it somehow.
Which year was that? Just to give some context.
This is 2009, 2010. And then eventually that interest in social media, especially LinkedIn, led us to have a reseller license for LinkedIn in the Nordics. So we resold LinkedIn before LinkedIn was a thing. It had a couple of 100,000 members in the Nordics at the time. But then LinkedIn saw that, hey, we will do our own thing here. And then that sort of went down the drain. But then I asked my former employer, which I then worked for as a recruitment assistant, that I know all these things about LinkedIn and I want to work with that. But I want to work internally with that here at Academic Work, was the company. And then the owner and CEO, Johan, said, you know what, if you do a training for the salespeople in Stockholm, they are fierce. And if you do a training for them and they find it valuable, then you're hired. So I did that. And then I got hired by Academic Work to explore opportunities on how to use social media, basically. And then that in turn led me into getting the request to do the same thing for Spotify. So I joined Spotify in 2013. And at first I did the same, working with social media, but then gradually moved into a sort of real, if we might call it that, HR position. So I was the HR BP for the tech infrastructure teams at Spotify at first, and then worked there for six years in total, before once again with Fredrik jumping on the consultancy train on a consultancy agency, and working there for 4 years in various positions. And basically we helped tech startups across the Nordics with their HR practices. So I've been interiming as CHRO, been doing various stuff relating to how do you create good HR practices in newly founded companies or sort of semi-scale ups as well. But then I came across Avalanche, and Avalanche, that's where I work today. It's a gaming studio. We do video games. We do AAA games for players such as Microsoft, but we also develop our own games. So we have the best of two worlds. But yeah, it's a tremendously fun workplace, and there I oversee the parts where we develop our own games. So I help them with HR practitioners. But as you mentioned as well, long story short, but yeah, that is essentially the essence of my LinkedIn resume. But if we turn it back to your question about AI, from the sidelines, I'm also always been writing. I said, like, I've been writing stuff on the internet since 2010. That's when we started the HR Sweden blog. And I've been writing passionately about how HR can take more leaps into the digital world. And obviously, that has led me down various paths, the social media path, the Bitcoin path, the metaverse path, the remote work path, whatever it might be. But all of a sudden, everyone was talking about AI, including me. And I just have a vetted interest for understanding new technology and trying to bridge the gap between the new technology and how HR could use it or should use it as well. And I'm just very, very passionate about caring for the HR community. That is essentially the whole sort of idea behind it. I want us to be way more proactive and forward-leaning when it comes to using digital products. And that has been the red thread throughout my whole career, that I want us to be in charge of this digital transformation that has been ongoing for as long as I've been in the work life, at least. So yeah, that is the full story of how I got here.
Very, very cool. No, but super interesting that you have all of these perspectives, right? You have been working from the consulting side, smaller companies, the Spotify journey, academic work. So seeing the world from different perspectives, that's super valuable. And also it seems like you have a history of being an early adopter and an advocate for new technology, which is super cool. The only, like, I don't know, the drawback there is like you're then going to test all of this stuff, and then what's just on hype and what is actually creating value for the organization.
Yeah, that's also a very good question that I ask myself constantly. Is this hype or is it real?
Yeah.
And I always try to sort of separate that and see what's what. And I mean, I've been advocating for stuff that no one is using and no one will use for sure. So absolutely, that is a drawback. But I mean, you learn from that as well, and you fail fast, and then you move on. So that is
the upside is much larger than the downside of wasting a couple of hours. So
and I also see it as a privilege that I can test and try stuff, and then I can share my fails with the rest of the world, so they don't have to. That is, I mean. Yeah,
good point.
Fantastic.
Good point. I think there's a topic today being more on the AI and ChatGPT. So I think we can conclude that it's not a hype. It's very much here to stay. Just sort of regarding the hype part, I just remember a year or 2 years back, everybody was talking about Clubhouse, and we needed to have a dedicated team to focus on Clubhouse, position ourselves, and then a week or two later, everything was dead. So you have those cases as well.
I'm not that active on Clubhouse anymore. I have to admit that. No,
I don't know if it still exists, but no, but okay. I think what would be cool is to understand maybe on the ChatGPT and also AI. When did it pop up on your radar? When did you sort of see that this wasn't a hype and you're ready to really invest time in it?
So when I first discovered it, that was the day it was launched, 30th November last year. I mean, being embedded in not only HR community, but also somewhat the tech community as well, that popped up on the radar immediately, saying this is something people should try. It was a bit of a hassle to try it at first because it was a hard time. I had a hard time getting in. But that was one of those, aha moments almost, where you will tell your kids where you were when you tried it at first, because that was the feeling I got from it immediately. Like, okay, this is something else. I mean, chatbots up until that date, they were I mean, they were horrible. Like it's hard to remember that almost now, but they were horrible. I mean, you went to, if you bought something from a store and you wanted to sort of chat about how to return it or whatever, you immediately were faced by a chatbot that didn't understand a single thing. Like all you ever wanted was to talk to a human being on the other end. Like
human.
please reroute me to a human. Like this is not going anywhere. And then all of a sudden ChatGPT enters, and then you get this immediate feeling that there must be someone on the other side. This can't be true, because it replies in a way that makes sense, and also that it feels human. Like so that was, I mean, that was the first immediate reaction. Okay, this is something big. But as always, like I want to try it out thoroughly before doing anything. So I tested it throughout the whole December. I tried and sort of, I just tried to get my head around, okay, is this, once again, like, is it hype, or is it just, is it something concrete? Will this change stuff? But then quite early in January, after trying it out, I spent an unhealthy amount of time speaking to ChatGPT during Christmas break. And you can ask my wife about this, because she woke up in the middle of the night and asked, like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, but I'm just, chatting with ChatGPT back and forth around HR issues or whatever it might be. So I just really explored it during Christmas. And then in January, I wrote the first piece about, okay, this is something to bring up on the radar. I think it was too early still. Like, people largely ignore that. I mean, I had a following, it's not that, but and I mean, there were other articles as well mentioning this, and it started to sort of semi pop up as an HR topic. But it's nowhere near the hype that we're now seeing. So it's been a gradual move, and I think I first realized the hype because I posted a prompt. Oh, it's two sort of instances that has prompted me to see that this will be in hype. First and foremost, I did a webinar in Swedish. And as always, when I do a webinar, I think that, it will be my mom and 3 of her friends, because she's told them you need to listen to Johannes because he can't be alone. And then it's my wife, and it's a couple of friends. And I mean, if it's a couple of hundred, that is fantastically fine. And that is what it's been in the past as well. When I've been doing stuff, there's 400 or 500 people showing up, and I mean, that is fantastic. It's a lot of people. This time it was 4,500 people listening in live, and this was in Swedish as well. So it's a very narrow subset of the world. I mean, not a lot of people know Swedish if you look at the global population. So 4,500 people listening to that. 65,000 people have viewed it as per today, and I mean, I couldn't handle my inbox for several weeks afterwards. Jesus. Because there were so many questions and so many, like, just, oh, this was fantastic, or I didn't agree with that. And like, there was so many comments. And I said, I've been doing stuff on the internet for several years, and I never ever have experienced this. And then you realize that this is more than hype. This is something concrete. People can see the impact. People understand that this is important, and people struggle to get a sort of grasp on, okay, how will this impact me? What will I do with it? So that was the first instance. The other instance is that I posted the most silly article perhaps that I've ever posted, about just a long list of prompts for ChatGPT that you can use if you're in HR. And it blew up like crazy. Like, it's well over 100,000 people who have read that article by now. It's been spread. I mean, there were times during the spring where I couldn't open my LinkedIn because you couldn't make sense of all the notifications you got where people tagged me in, this is a prompt library, please check it out. It's insane. And I think it's fantastic. Like, the power of internet is truly amazing still. But those two instances confirmed to me that this is something that is tangible and that will continue to develop, even after the initial hype is gone, because that will fade away. I'm 100% certain, but there's tangible things that will still linger around and be valuable. So yeah, those are the two instances that sort of stood out for me.
Absolutely. Now that's super impressive, and seems like both timing and content was on point. So that was really cool to see how it just blew up.
And I mean, it's luck as well. I mean, partly it's luck. Obviously, you need to do it to be able to hit it, but it's also partly luck and timing. Obviously, I mean, I'm a guy from Dals-Ed in Dalsland. I have like that's who I am. It shouldn't be possible to reach this audience, like, and it still blows my mind. I can't take that in. Dals-Ed is there's 3,000 people living in Ed. I mean, that is. The whole of Ed was in my live webinar. That's how I perceive it.
The village is real.
Yeah, exactly.
But on a more sort of personal note, was it ambition to position yourself as an expert, or was it just sort of sharing this with the community, or what was?
It's never been like my intent has never been to be the expert. I still don't perceive myself as the expert. I know that other people perceive me as that, and to some extent I have to just adopt that role because I know that I read a lot of and I share a lot. So obviously I learn a lot, or I hope I learn a lot. But that was never the intent. The intent has always been I want to help the community. I want to help HR people because and ultimately that is anxiety driven because I want to create a good future for my kids basically. And I am one of those who strongly believe that HR has an important role to play in companies. We can argue about that if that's true or not, but that is still my dearest sort of intent. Obviously, talking very biasedly as well because I'm in HR. But to the full extent, I truly believe that we need to handle this issue, and I want to be if I can be a catalyst for that. That is fantastic. I won't have all answers. That is impossible. No. But if I can spark discussions, if I can spark people to think, and if I can spark people, I mean, people are free to steal whatever I do or borrow whatever I do and build upon whatever I do. It's not my sort of knowledge. It's our knowledge, and we share that. And if we share that, and if we make it better, that's fantastic. Because that is one of the most common questions I get. You share so much, aren't you afraid that people are stealing it? And now I see also people pointing stuff towards me saying like, have you seen what they are doing over here? They're making a course, but it's largely based on your work. And I say, fantastic, like that, because I don't have time to do it all. So, but if we share together, that's fantastic.
Cool. Good intentions. I think we can jump into the more sort of practical stuff here. So just wanted to see if you could give us maybe top 3 on how ChatGPT is transforming the landscape of recruitment. In what type of ways do you see that things will be different?
First and foremost, I don't think people will write job ads anymore. And that is both good and bad. Because, I mean, on the positive side, we have that job ads will now not be, they will be correctly written. They will not have grammar issues and whatnot. Like we all seen those job ads. And the worst examples are when you copy paste the template and the template is wrong, or there's still bits about left from the template in the job ad. So that's one issue. I have one instance where it would be better, but on the downside of that is obviously I think they would look more alike because I think people are lazy to that extent that they will just ask ChatGPT, make me a job ad. They won't give it that much detail, hence the output will be similar to what others are creating. So that is job ads, but I don't see why anyone should write job ads in the future. Actually, like I can't. If you really love it, fantastic, do that. But I don't see that being the case. Then obviously interview questions. That is also something that we see people are using it for and generating that as well. I think I've now published, as we are recording this, I've now published as well an article about the ins and outs of that, because what I've been hearing now is that people are also connecting, like candidates are connecting their answers to ChatGPT, or the questions that they are get asked. They take that, they record that with a mobile app, and then they shoot it up to ChatGPT, and then they answer what ChatGPT tells them to answer. And you can think about that. Then you have on one hand the interviewer sort of creating all the questions in ChatGPT, and then you have ChatGPT answer all the questions. So it's basically ChatGPT interviewing ChatGPT, which I found
robot motion going
on. Exactly, which I find a bit funny, but also like if you think one step ahead, like okay, what will that mean for the employees when they enter the workforce, and does it matter or not? Because I mean, we have the tools, and if you know how to use them, is that good or bad? The ins and outs of that, I haven't landed in yet what I really believe about that, but I think it's a real issue that will occur and occur more frequently. So that's perhaps the second and third way how ChatGPT will sort of interfere, but change recruitment.
What about other areas of HR? I've been checking out on YouTube and saw an example of learning and development strategies, which was quite cool. So where do you see other natural use cases outside of recruitment, but within the HR space?
No, but I think all parts of HR can, to some extent, be helped by ChatGPT or other generative AI tools, for that matter. Like it's not only ChatGPT out there, but I mean, if we take L&D for example, obviously you can do courses. There are tools who now do full-fledged courses, not ChatGPT, but other tools with video, with like they create it from scratch. You write what you want the people to learn, and then it sort of backtracks that and creates a course for you from start to finish. So obviously that is, I think L&D is one of the areas where we'll see a lot of sort of efficiency improvements with ChatGPT, because that also takes quite a lot of time to create all these trainings. And some of the trainings are just rudimentary, compliance trainings where there's a lot of material, a lot of text already written. There's very clear laws around how you need to do these compliance trainings. And I have a hard time seeing them not being somewhat sort of influenced by ChatGPT or created fully by ChatGPT or similar tools. So L&D, absolutely. Comp and Ben, I have another video about Comp and Ben using these tools as a benchmark tool. It works okay, I would say, for now, but this is, I mean, we have to remember as well, the tool is 10 months old. Like this is equivalent to, I mean, we're not even in this with the second iPhone. If we take that comparison, the first iPhone was lousy. Like the camera was insanely bad. It didn't have 3G. Like that's where we are right now. We're in the first iPhone phase. So we will see development of this. ChatGPT is not connected to the internet either, so it doesn't know real-time conversation data. But imagine it would. Then you would get completely different answers, and it sources that information super quickly. So I mean, I could go on and on, because I literally see every area being impacted. Labor law is another one that I think would be crucial. Like if you have a bot that is always up to date with the latest labor laws, you could use that to just ask, what should I do here, or what's the ins and outs of this, and then people always object and say, but there's also this judgment component to it, where a court ruling is also important in most laws. Yeah, but those are also text-based. Like it will know that immediately. The minute it's launched from the court or it's published from the court, they will know, hey, this is the new text now. This is how they interpret this law. I think all parts will be impacted.
Makes sense. What do you think about like just trusting the information that's coming out of it? Because like labor law and making key business decisions, and then just trusting that what I'm reading is the correct answer. How do we sort of validate that?
I would never do that. So I would never trust it right now. What I'm talking about now, or what I talked about, is perhaps more in the future, because that's not the current state. But I don't think it will fully be there in the near future either. It will take us 80-90% perhaps at best, and then we need to do the last bit ourselves. But I mean, even if it helps us 30-40% or even 20%, that is, I mean, if it makes your life 20% more efficient, your working life 20% more efficient, that is one full day you get back. That is a lot, and that is very conservatively counted. So But do I trust it? Not at all right now. Not absolutely not. Like I wouldn't take it for granted at all. So you always need the human perspective. It can be a great foundation. It can be a sort of great starting point, but you always need to go through it yourself at the moment.
I have so many questions.
Yeah, shoot.
To structure it more, but let's say we're doing a recruitment process end to end, right? You mentioned that in terms of interview questions, that's a good use case for ChatGPT. Job description, a good use case for ChatGPT. What about sort of the job analysis part, like understanding what is actually important, what type of profile we're actually looking at? And this is not necessarily just connected to ChatGPT, but AI in general. Like, how do we, let's say you have a sales team, who's the best, who's our top, what defines our top 10% salespeople? What are their, I don't know, traits or skills or abilities, and doing that type of validation studies and just running AI and pushing a lot of different data, and then actually understand what's important. Because at least on my end, that's what I feel is a bit of a pitfall or a challenge in recruitment, is that you build this job analysis, you have hypothesis on what's important, but it's basically like shit in can become shit out if you're measuring the wrong thing. So
yeah. And I mean, ultimately, and this is also sort of a dual-edged sword. Because I mean, yes, that would be 100% possible, I think, to capture all these nuances, to capture what makes a good salesperson. I mean, if you look at all the data points a salesperson is generating that we could capture right now. So, I mean, you have obviously the basics, you have the email, you have Slack, and you see like tone of voice between colleagues, whatnot. You could capture all of that. You could also, in all digital meetings, or reach outs or whatever it might be, calls, you could capture that as well. And you could see what is converting and not, and you could have that analyzed. I think that is the technical challenge, it is quite easy, in all honesty. I think that is, and people are to some extent already doing all of this analysis. But then it becomes, for me, more of an ethical question. Will we do this? Like, what happens with the data? Is the data secure? Does the individual suffer from us as an employer monitoring them in this way? Where's the line between the data we need to do perhaps 15-20% better recruitment next time we're recruiting our next salesperson versus the privacy of the individual? So where do we draw the lines between that and how do we operate our business basically around these sort of transparency and inclusive principles? But I mean, it's possible 100%, and there are companies capturing all of these data points, and they say that they aggregate them, and to some extent I do believe them, but it's still, there's always that privacy concern, at least that I have, where even if you should you, that is sort of the main overarching question ethically for me, because we will have so many possibilities. We already have so many possibilities to tap into data points, but should we?
Do you think that this discussion can take a lot of directions? Because do you think this is a more regulatory play, or do you think companies themselves need to or should be able to decide what type of company they want to be?
I think right now it's up to the companies. I mean, we have laws, obviously, GDPR, whatnot, SOC 2 compliant, FREM 2 as well, where you can't send data however you want, for example. But I think if companies don't self-regulate this and make sure that they protect the privacy of the individual, which in all honesty, that might not align with making more money, which is most companies' interests. If we don't self-regulate, it will be for sure be a discussion amongst regulators to do this. And there's ongoing debates within both the European Union, but also the US. New York already has a law around this, or an AI law that it's not the same. I should state as well. That law is more around when AI is used to being sort of more of a predictor around performance and hiring. But still, I think the regulators will thoroughly look into this. Maybe perhaps not now, but I mean, somewhere along the lines that will come for sure as regulators needs to keep up with the technology as well. But right now, I think it's more up to the company management or to the company to decide what type of company do we want to be, and also what can we stand in front of our employees and say with a straight sort of face. That is where we're at currently. But that might change as well. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of the job analysis, that's more an ethical question. Technology is not the hindrance there or a blocker. Everything is, or not everything, but a lot of stuff is possible.
Yeah.
Given the...
Absolutely. I mean, and that goes for performance and time spent as well. Like you could make a thorough look at that as well. So I mean, yeah, it's for me, it's more of an ethical question. I might, go out on a limb and say that is technically possible and it's not all, but I've seen examples, not to that full extent yet, but semi full extent.
And then if we start with the job analysis, we do the job description in ChatGPT. And then we post it. Hopefully we get some applicants, hopefully, or I don't know, bots or people, humans, I don't know who's applying. And then in parallel, traditionally, this difficult to fill role is a sourcing game. So how would you use ChatGPT or other types of tools to solve the sourcing part of it?
There are several tools popping up now that claims to be sourcers, like AI sourcers, and I've seen some of them. They are fairly good, like they're getting better and better. What I like the most is those tools who not source fully, but they just provide you with a list that says like you set the recommendation. You basically put in the job ad or the job description, and you sort of clearly define these are the roles, these are the competencies I'm looking for. These are the skills and traits the person that I want to hire needs to have or think that they should have. And then the program starts working, it sends you a list, and you have to do thumbs up, thumbs down, basically. And it's not like, do I want to hire them or not? It's more, have I, and I in this case, then the AI bot, have I sourced the right candidate or not? So you're giving feedback back to the bot saying, yay or nay, basically, that was a good pick, maybe perhaps not so 100% relevant, but still the skills and the traits and the whatnot, they were correct, because then it will sort of go out and look again, and then you can start sort of once again the feedback loop. But it needs an initial push right now. But I think that is what we will see even more. I mean, sourcing takes a lot of time, a lot of manpower, and yeah, it's most likely that will be somewhat outsourced, at least. Yeah.
What do you think about the human outreach part? Do you think that should remain human, will remain human, or do you think
I think it should remain human. That doesn't mean it will, because I mean, we all know. We all received, the generic outreaches that you are clearly sort of sent this to one else because my name is not Marie, but it's like, but still, I think there's this human element to it. But if I'm realistic, that would probably be outsourced as well pretty soon. And I've seen also examples of that where they take into account, because those generic outreaches, those are, I would imagine at least be sort of not so effective. But I've seen examples where they basically take your name and they looked at your LinkedIn profile, they looked on the recent posts you posted, they search for you on the internet, and then they compile a highly personalized message to you as well. So I think that is something we will see as well. And that could be harder to differentiate from a human being versus a computer. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, part of me still wishes that it's a human reaching out, but I know that that's just it's probably just a wish.
It will be interesting to see how, like, when this becomes more and more sophisticated and commoditized, if people are then just ignoring it and just waiting for that video super personalized, or people stepping up on the doorstep, just sort of, here, I'm a human, I want to recruit you.
Absolutely. But I think, to your point about video, you have videos being highly personalized as well. So you submit 7 minutes of yourself, and then you can basically use it as a text generator. So you write, this is what I want to say, or even you say like, I want to send this to 5,000 people, and it customizes to their name, role, where they work, and whatnot. So that is also, it's also very hard to distinguish it from if it's a actual video or an AI generated one.
That's very true. So there's no
so
AI is everywhere.
Knocking on doors sounds more.
But again, that could also be a hologram,
exactly,
right? So you don't know.
We're not really there with holograms yet, but who knows?
What good? So, any specific sourcing tools that comes to mind? You remember that?
No, I forgot the name, but I met them, and I have them written up, obviously, at Full Stack HR. There's a list of a lot of tools there.
Good branding.
Exactly.
We'll push people.
Holly is the name.
Holly, yeah.
Yep.
What's your take on the CV screening, the automated CV screening? That's been a lot of criticism around that, especially for Amazon, and how it became discriminative in terms of their screening. So
I agree with that. I think I think that is still something that we need to do ourselves, because the AIs that I've seen, at least so far, they're not fully there yet. Like as mentioned before, like they can do a 70 to 80% job, but they can't do a 100% job. And I think that is very crucial when you're screening CVs and when you're in the business of dealing with people, that you do to a large extent. I mean, we will fail as well, but to a large extent, you do a 100% job, and that you also very thoroughly can explain why did you reject this CV. And I think that's where they fail, because they are more or less black boxes, these AI models, or not all of them, but most are. So we don't really know the ins and outs. And I mean, OpenAI says this themselves. They don't really fully understand how ChatGPT is working. And I think it would be dangerous to let an AI decide important decision. And I think the hiring decision is an important one. And I think we should, once again, be able to look people straight in the face and say, this is why we rejected you, or this is, this was the reason. If AI becomes sort of that smart that it can actually give a very valid reason that also is a true reason, absolutely, then we can, start exploring that. But I don't think we're there yet.
Makes sense, and I agree. It should be 100%. Like, okay, 80% is not good enough. People have spent time in applying, and in terms of any form of discrimination, we don't. 100% no go on that.
Yeah.
So I share your views on that topic. If we look more to the assessment part of it, right? So companies are using anything from, for example, developers, coding challenges, ability tests, personality tests. We're doing interviews, reference checks, etc. So do you see any of these methods being replaced by ChatGPT or AI, or any new tools that will come to mind, or maybe aggregation of the data in making the right decision?
Yeah, but I think, for example, it's no secret that I love MetaView, for example, who compiles interview notes, because I think that is a very good use case for AI in the recruitment process, where you see that, hey, this is the problem most organizations face, where interview notes, they are, in all honesty, and I can go to myself here, pretty crappy, like because you try to be so much in the conversation, and taking notes while talking, that is, at least for me, it might say more about me than anything now.
I've had people reading my notes, they don't understand anything.
No, exactly.
I can relate.
No, but and also, if you look at the sort of average hiring manager, that is usually true as well, that the notes they're not so good. So by having an AI that takes notes, that is a true value add, as I see it. That's something that you then can release to AI, so you can focus on, okay, how is this person answering me? What's the interaction we're having? And you can focus on that human element, which I think we do best, hopefully. And then you can let just AI take care of the notes. So I think that is a lovely use case from my point of view. But then again, like all the things you mentioned, yes, they will be impacted one way or another. We will see code tests, for example. They need now to structure their tests in a way that makes them, unbreakable by AI, basically, because people are using ChatGPT when solving these code puzzles, or a GitHub Copilot or whatever they're using, but they have an assistant. And once again, like going back to what we talked about earlier, like is that good and bad? I can't really tell, because I mean, to some extent, if they are able to use that while coding, yeah, but then that's a real life scenario, so that's good. But once again, if we really want to truly assess what can you, person X, what's your true skill and capacity, well, then it's a horrible situation where someone uses ChatGPT to cheat basically on that test. But I think we have to sort of elevate our minds a bit around what is cheating in this instance. Like, if we allow a Copilot to be sort of ever present, yeah, well, then we should test with Copilot ever present.
Yeah.
If we really want people to, come up with unique code that is unique to them and really utilize only their abilities, then we shouldn't. Then we need to find ways to test that as well. But I mean, I've heard a lot of organizations now going back to pair programming, where they basically sit together in a room and program together, because then you know exactly what's going on. So yeah, it's. But yeah,
it's fascinating on so many levels. If you think about like developers now or previously versus like in 2-3 years, will it be the developers with the best mathematical background, knowledge, insights, most beautiful code, or is it the ones that can write the best prompts and be pragmatic and get shit done? And
what's usually been sort of rewarded, at least in all companies I've been in, and I've been in tech companies more or less my entire career, that has been engineers who get shit done. They are the ones being rewarded, because every company I know of, they have tech debt, and it's not because their code is beautifully written, it's because they've solved stuff and problems that arises. So getting shit done and shipping stuff, that has been always sort of a trait that is highly regarded. So yeah,
we also talked a bit about like these both Holly on the sourcing part of it, and also the interview tool that you mentioned. Are there any like top of mind tools that you would recommend for HR or recruitment specifically? That sort of is your you have your list, of course, but anything you can share with the listeners here that you feel is a must-have in the toolbox for HR person?
Yeah, but I think Sana Labs is one that is really interesting to me. Obviously, they are Swedish as well, so it's close to my heart for that reason. I'm in no way affiliated with them. I just think that they're doing interesting stuff, and obviously it's easier also to relate because you hear a lot about them in Sweden. There are other similar tools out there as well, but what Sana Labs is doing is fantastic. I think if they get their head truly around sort of being this, one space where you can basically ask whatever question you might have about an organization and sort of capture the organization's shared knowledge in one space. If they can truly do that, I mean, that is a game changer. It comes with problems, obviously, because if you train a model on the processes and documents and whatnot that you have in your organization, you have to make sure that the documents and processes and whatever you have basically in your vastly big backlog of stuff that we all have lying around in Google Drive or wherever we have it, that needs to be good as well. It needs to be unbiased, good, forward thinking, because then if you train the model on that, that will also define the culture and values going forward. Like if you ask that, be mindful about how it answers. But Sana Labs, I think, is a fantastically cool tool. I also really like Progression. Progression, they make career frameworks and they automate that process. So yeah, they look into how do we build sort of efficient career frameworks, and are also following up on that people who are on a certain level, that they actually perform on that level. And I mean, that is, if you're in HR, you've experienced that problem with outdated career levels or people not meeting the standards to that career level. And if they can solve that issue as well, once again, I've seen the demo and never used the tool actually, so it also depends on how they're actually solving that problem. But if they really solve it, that is also a fantastic use case that will save especially large organizations. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of time and effort that goes into that part. So
I wish we had this conversation 6 months ago, Johannes, because we've been through a massive massive project on our career framework. It's very time consuming. It's super interesting. It's super difficult. But yeah, if there are any tools like you mentioned now that can help out in that sense. Yes, the use case is definitely there.
But I also think, like, because there's so much interesting stuff happening in the overall sort of, the tools we use every day, whether you work in Google or in Microsoft, which most of us do, they all have their AI models coming or already launched. And I think that is what will have the biggest impact on the majority of people, because these sort of niche tools that are solving a niche use case, yes, some will use them, but the majority of people, they will still continue to use Outlook or Gmail, or they will have their meetings in Hangouts or Teams. And I mean, just by having this automated meeting transcript, for example, or Google Duets, the best feature that Google Duet has now, or that they launched, is that if you're late to a meeting, you get the meeting summary, which it's going to be horrible for me, because I'm going to be even later to meetings, because I know that I will get the summary once I get there. But I mean, I think those will have the biggest impact on people, because those are the tools we, to some extent, are all stuck with, like whether we like it or not. Sometimes we need to use Google Words to write whatever we need to write, and when those are AI infused, that will make an impact.
And if you think about like what we just talked about, the career framework that being time consuming and can be changed with AI or tools, do you think that means that we will see fewer HR professionals in the future? Will they do other types of work? Is this a new industrial revolution where people will will there be fewer jobs out there? Of course, a big question. Not expecting you would be a rich man if you had the answer to that. But it would be interesting to hear your 2 cents on it.
I'd love to have the answer. Like, it would be fantastic to know. But I think this is the thing that I say when I meet HR people in general. Like, the future is not decided. We shape the future. So we largely decide on how we want the future to be. And that's something you easily forget when you hear all these wise people talk about, okay, this is the future of AI, because they don't know either. They are making assumptions, and those are assumptions. They're pretty good at making assumptions as well, but still, it doesn't have to be that way. The future is not deterministic. We create the future, and I really want the future where HR is still around. Of course, there will be more efficiency sort of gains across this. There has to be. I can't see it in another way, but I'm pretty sure that we will find other things to do. For example, like I mentioned a lot of tools, and someone will need to make sure that these tools are working. So I think, I mean, if I were to get into HR, if I'm a student now, for example, or if I'm already in HR as well, what I would do would be to double down on my digitalization skills and really make sure that I understand it, because I think that is a way to future-proof your career within HR. But I mean, once again, who knows? People have been talking about this 4-day work week ever since I started working. I haven't seen it yet, but it would be lovely if that is the outcome of AI as well, that we actually get a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week. So we trade that sort of efficiency gain with actually having perhaps a better work-life balance, because that is also an issue in most organizations. People are working too much, or that they struggle with sort of getting their life, their whole life together. So, I mean, if that could be one piece of the puzzle, that would be fantastic. But that requires an effort from us, because that won't happen automatically. Like, we all know that companies, once again, they need to make a profit, and they are profit maximizers by nature. And I love that I've been in private companies my whole career. I truly understand that is the way it has to be. But if we can find a balance between that, it's okay. So we can do some increase of profits, but we can also at the same time increase the well-being and life of people. Okay, well, that's a fantastic thing. And I think those conversations, we need to start having them and pondering about them as well. But I'm a positive person. That is that's the nature of me as well. So I think that HR will be around. We will be 100% AI infused very, very shortly. I can't see it in any other capacity that if we meet here in a year or two, we will all be using AI to a much larger extent than we do right now. But we will still be around. If we look long term, if we look like 10, 15, 20 years, who knows? I mean, people always tend to say, oh, but we in HR, we're safe because, we have this human capacity. But I think there will be ways. We mentioned one way, for example, this personalized video. Yeah, well, that is one step of just creating avatars, for example. So what if you create a digital avatar of Johannes that when a boss or manager needs help, immediately jumps on the call. It's mimicking my voice, my style. It's doing it with empathy, understands context and whatnot. But it's available 24/7. It's never in meetings. It's all you could always have it readily available. So why should you then call your HR manager instead? You can get a better answer faster with more empathy than you could if you talk to your actual person. So I think we sometimes overestimate that part of our work as well. But of course, I mean, I would hate it to be that way, but it's
but it's a very valid point, and I think nobody can, I don't know, be safe, so to say, when it comes to being.
No, and the other thing I have to say about that as well is that if we see efficiency gains in the organization, if organization need less people, then there ultimately will be less need for HR as well, because what we do is manage people basically, or not manage people, but we cater for people in organizations. And if you see efficiency gains in whatever department you might be working with, well, then you don't need that many HR people. So that is also, I think we're overestimating ourselves sometimes. We are not that unique, and we will have to think and ponder really hard and thoroughly about, okay, what is the future of work? How do we want to shape it? Not only for ourselves, but also for the workforce that we're overseeing.
Just a couple more questions. One would be on how you see the market in terms of adoption. Do you see that the scale-ups, the VC-backed companies are much more taking a larger step or quicker step to introduce these tools, or do you see enterprises that are already plug and play in the Microsoft sphere with Copilot?
A bit of both. I think it's more about the mindset thing, as far as I'm concerned. I've been talking to a lot of HR people over the last months about this as well, and adoption is largely now driven by that you have someone interested, that you have someone who says yes, and you have a nice IT department that allows it, and a nice legal department that also allows it. It's more down to that than the size of the company. I've seen very large corporations working with fantastic implementations of AI, beta testing Copilot, really exploring ways of doing it. I've seen very, very traditional niches such as banks doing also a tremendous work in this area. But then I've seen small companies that are, if I just used sort of my bias, they would be the first one to jump on. They resist it because I don't really have time because it's so much else going on, which I fully understand. We all have, but it's still they almost reject it. So it's way more about mindset than anything else, I would say. Way more.
That is cool to see that it's not just the hipster companies, growth companies that are doing this, but also the large enterprises as well.
Very much so.
If you're a HR manager or recruiter today, you mentioned that you would position yourself in terms of digital tools and digital understanding. What concretely would you do as the next steps? Like, I'm listening to this episode, Jesus, Johannes, he knows what he's talking about. Let me become Johannes.
That would be my first advice. Don't become Johannes. It's a horrible thing to be. No, but it's but I would say be curious. I think that's the most important part right now, because as said in the beginning, no one really knows, me included, about where will this go. All we know, or all that I know, is that it will change stuff, and it will be a fun journey. I feel so lucky, truly, to be part of this. Like, I am so happy that I'm alive right now to get to experience this as well. And I really think there's so much opportunities and so much fun stuff going on, but you need to be curious and you need to be open-minded. So that would be my first advice. And then secondly, try to learn as much as possible. And I try to share as much as I can. There are others as well. You have Josh Bersin, for example. He's a great guy to follow on LinkedIn. He has a fantastic podcast as well. But there are a lot of people talking about this now, obviously. But listen to and try to take in as much as possible. That would be my second advice. To try to learn and conceptualize as much as possible. And that could be a bit hard. I know that, because there's a lot of buzz and what's what. But yeah, I promise to do my uttermost going forward as well, to try to sort between all what's going on. Not saying that you should only listen to me, obviously, but it's I'm one part of the puzzle. There's others as well, but educate yourself and be interested and be curious. That is my best advice for individuals who want to learn and sort of stay up to date with this.
To summarize, be curious, but don't be Johannes. That's
that's a good summary. I think that could be the title for this episode. That's
No, but yeah, thank you so much, Johannes, for sitting down with me for this hour and discussing a super interesting topic. Great insights. We'll be sharing your links and where to follow you in the description field. So again, thank you so much for staying in this conversation.
The pleasure is all mine. And as you can see, I get easily excited about this topic as well. So it's the pleasure is truly on my side. Thank you so much.
Always good to geek out. That's very cool.
Exactly.